Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I still remember the weight of her when she was first placed in my arms. 7 pounds of fragile life wrapped in a pink hospital blanket. Her tiny hand curled instinctively around my finger, and I felt something inside me shift forever. Her name is Lena. That was the moment I knew. Everything I'd been before didn't matter anymore. She was my reason to exist. Life didn't exactly deal us a fair hand. Lena's mom, my wife, passed away when Lena was only 5. It was sudden, an aneurysm that gave no warning. People tell you time heals like it's some universal truth, but they don't mention that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean you stop feeling that hollow ache every night when the house is too quiet. Lena and I became each other's lifelines after that. We leaned on one another, sometimes in silence, sometimes in tears, just trying to figure out how to keep breathing when the world felt so cruel. But with that bond came something I didn't expect: fear. Not just the normal fear parents have, but a paralyzing, irrational terror of losing her too. It started as background noise, little what-ifs that I could push away. Then it got louder. Soon I couldn't leave her out of my sight without feeling like my chest was caving in. It changed how I parented. Field trips? Absolutely not. Birthday parties? Only if I knew every parent, every exit, every detail. Even the simplest things became stressful. A quick trip to the grocery store? No chance. She came with me every single time. When she was little, it worked. She didn't know any different. But kids grow. They want independence. By the time Lena turned 13, I could see the frustration building in her. The way her face tightened every time I said no. The sighs when I hovered. The conversations we didn't have because I was too scared to let go. It all came to a head one Saturday morning. I had to run out for milk, and as usual I told her to grab her shoes. She looked up from her laptop, exasperated. "Dad, can you please just go? I'm in the middle of something." I hesitated. "It'll only take a few minutes, come on." She snapped her laptop shut. "Why can't you trust me to be alone for 20 minutes? I forced a smile. "I do trust you. I just don't want you by yourself." "I'm not a baby, Dad." Her voice cracked, frustration spilling out like water from a dam. That hit me hard. Later that night, I sat on the couch, staring at the muted glow of the TV screen, wondering if I was breaking something between us. Was my fear hurting her? Probably. But fear doesn't listen to reason. A few months later, after countless mental debates and sleepless nights, I made a decision. She deserved freedom. At least a little. So one afternoon, as she sat doing homework at the kitchen table, I walked in and said, "I'm going to Target for a few things." She groaned, ready to get up and grab her shoes, but I stopped her. Alone. The way her face lit up, I'll never forget it. She smiled this huge, unrestrained smile, the kind that makes your chest ache because you realize how much they've wanted something and how long you've kept it from them. It was a milestone. For her. For me. I got in the car, hands trembling on the wheel, and drove off. My heart pounded like I was abandoning her on an island. Halfway to Target, I almost turned around. But I kept going. By the time I parked, I'd wrestled my panic down to a dull throb. Inside, I grabbed a cart and started down the aisles, muttering to myself, "She's fine. She's safe. Everything's okay." Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. Lena. Probably asking for snacks. I swiped to answer, a smile forming, and froze. On the other end, all I heard was screaming. Piercing, panicked screaming. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like free fall. "Lena!" My voice shook. "Baby, what's happening?" She was sobbing, words tumbling out between gasps. I don't know. I don't know. I think... Oh God. I think someone... Then the line erupted with another scream, and something shattered. I didn't even remember leaving the cart. I just ran, out of the store, through the sliding doors, keys in hand, heart exploding in my chest. By the time I hit the driver's seat, I was yelling into the phone, "Are you hurt? Lena, answer me. Are you hurt?" "Yes," she cried. There's blood." I threw the phone down and slammed the gas. Red lights blurred past. I didn't care. My mind was a hurricane of worst-case scenarios. Someone breaking in, someone hurting her, someone taking her away forever. Then blue and red lights filled my rearview mirror. A siren wailed. I was 2 blocks from home. 2 blocks. I had a choice. Pull over and waste precious minutes explaining, or keep going and pray they'd understand later. To anyone else, that might seem like a debate. To a parent, it's not a choice at all. I floored it. The siren screamed behind me as I tore down our street and skidded into the driveway. Before the car even stopped, I jumped out with my hands in the air shouting, "My daughter! My daughter's inside. She's hurt." The cops spilled out, weapons drawn, shouting commands I barely heard. My voice cracked as I screamed, "Please, she's inside. Help her." One officer, a tall guy with a crew cut, froze mid-step, his gun still raised. Something in my eyes must have told him I wasn't lying because he barked to his partner, "Cover him!" and sprinted for my keys. Those next 60 seconds felt like an eternity. I stood there, hands up, shaking so hard my teeth chattered, waiting to find out if my little girl was alive or... Then the door flew open. The cop emerged, leading Lena out by the shoulders. Blood streaked her arm and cheek, her eyes wild with terror. But she was walking, breathing. I fell apart right there on the driveway. "Ambulance!" the cop yelled, then turned to me. "She's cut, but she's okay. You need to stay put." I barely heard him. I couldn't stop staring at Lena, whispering, "You're okay. You're okay." Over and over like a prayer. Later, in the hospital, after the stitches and the cleanup, I finally got the story. She'd been making a sandwich when the glass of water next to her exploded. At the same time, she heard a deafening bang from the apartment next door. Turned out, our neighbor had been drinking and decided to clean his gun, without checking if it was loaded. The bullet punched through our wall and shattered the glass on the counter, spraying Lena with shards. It was a miracle she wasn't killed. A few inches, and I'd be planning a funeral instead of paying a hospital bill. As for me, I spent that night in a holding cell for fleeing a traffic stop. The judge later reduced it to a fine after hearing the circumstances. But none of that mattered. What mattered was this. I'd tried to loosen my grip on the fear, to give her freedom, and fate almost took her from me anyway. That thought haunted me for months. It clawed at me in the dark, whispered to me when I tried to sleep. I finally went to therapy. Weekly sessions chipped away at the panic that had ruled my life for years. I'm not perfect, I still worry. Always will. But I learned something. Fear doesn't keep the people we love safe. It just makes the time we have with them smaller, narrower, until it's gone. Lena's 20 now, living downtown in an apartment with more windows than I'm comfortable with. We talk every day. I still catch myself wanting to say, "Lock your door. Text me when you get home. Don't go out too late." But I bite my tongue, because loving someone means letting them live, even when every part of you wants to lock the world out. And God, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. I was 17 the night everything changed. It was early autumn in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where nothing bad ever seems to happen, or at least that's what everyone tells themselves. My parents had just left that morning for a week-long trip to Vancouver, visiting some old friends from when my dad worked there years ago. My older brother, Daniel, was away at college 2 states over, so for the first time in what felt like forever, the entire house was mine. I wasn't nervous about being alone. Honestly, I kind of loved it. I'd been staying home by myself since I was 12, and now at 17, I felt more than capable. Still, my parents made a big deal out of reminding me to keep the alarm on, lock every door, and call them if I needed anything. Typical parent stuff. To make the weekend more fun, I'd invited my friend Alex to come over. He was one of my closest guy friends, practically like family. And we planned to binge movies, eat junk food, and just hang out. Everything was going perfectly. Until Alex's phone buzzed at around 9:30 p.m. He frowned at the screen. Shit, my mom needs me to come home tonight. Something about an early appointment tomorrow. I tried to hide my disappointment. You serious? Dude, you promised to stay. I know, he said, grabbing his jacket. I'll come back tomorrow, okay? You'll be fine for one night. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, whatever. Drive safe. By 10 p.m., he was gone, and it was just me and Luna, my 20-pound cocker spaniel, curled up in the big, empty house. I texted my mom to let her know Alex had left and that I'd be alone. She replied almost instantly. Mom. Okay, sweetie. Just keep the alarm on and don't forget to lock up. Love you. Me. Love you too. Good night. After brushing my teeth and changing into pajamas, I decided to sleep in my parents' room. They had this huge flat-screen TV with full cable access, unlike the basic channels in my room. I set the alarm, made sure all the doors were locked, and climbed into their ridiculously comfortable bed. Luna jumped up beside me and curled into a little ball at my feet. Everything felt normal. Safe. I flipped through channels for a while, finally landing on some late-night movie. About 45 minutes later, just as I was starting to settle in, the sound that will haunt me forever shattered the silence. The house alarm went off. The piercing screech filled every corner of the house, and my heart nearly stopped. I froze, staring at the flashing red light on the alarm panel by the bedroom door. For 15 seconds, maybe more, I couldn't move. My brain raced. Did the alarm just malfunction? Did someone open a door? I replayed everything in my head. Every door had been locked. The alarm had been set. No one had a key except my parents, my brother, and me. Alex had just texted that he was home. No one else would be here. Unless someone broke in. The thought sent a cold wave down my spine. Finally, snapping out of my daze, I jumped off the bed and slammed the bedroom door shut, locking it with trembling hands. My first instinct was to leave the alarm blaring because I knew our system would automatically call the police after 1 minute. Plus, if someone was really inside, the noise might scare them off. I remembered my mom's nightstand. She kept a revolver in there, just in case. I'd never touched it before, but right now, it felt like the only thing standing between me and whoever might be in the house. My hands shook as I pulled open the drawer and saw the gun sitting there, loaded. I flicked off the safety like I'd seen in movies and gripped it with both hands. I couldn't believe what I was doing, kneeling on the floor of my parents' bedroom aiming a gun at the door, fully prepared to shoot if it came to that. I kept telling myself, stay calm. Don't panic. Don't make noise. 2 minutes crawled by like hours. The alarm was still screaming. Finally, I grabbed my phone with one hand and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I whispered. My house alarm just went off. I'm home alone. I'm in my parents' bedroom with the door locked. The dispatcher's voice was calm, reassuring. Okay, stay on the line with me. We've got officers on the way. Do not leave that room, understand? Yes, I breathed, gripping the gun tighter. Every creak of the house felt amplified like footsteps just beyond the door. Luna lifted her head once, ears perked, then settled back down. That helped a little. Within what felt like forever, but was probably 5 minutes, the dispatcher said the officers were outside. They checked the perimeter, then knocked on the front door. I hesitated before unlocking the bedroom, turning off the alarm, and putting the gun back in the nightstand. The officers asked a few questions, inspected the outside of the house, and said there were no signs of forced entry. Then they asked, "Do you want us to sweep the inside of the house?" Looking back now, I can't believe what I said. No, I think it's okay. They assured me they'd patrol the neighborhood for a while, and told me to call if anything else happened. After they left, I locked the door behind them and finally called my parents. My mom was calm, as always, while my dad was clearly panicking. They asked if I wanted them to come home early, but I told them no. I was about to reset the alarm when I realized something that made my stomach drop. The system wouldn't arm. It only does that when a door isn't fully closed. That meant something was still open. Gun back in hand, heart pounding, I walked through the house. Every door looked fine, until I reached the one that led to the garage. It was wide open. I froze. Someone had definitely opened it. Slowly, I stepped into the garage, flicking the light on, gun aimed straight ahead. Nothing. The 2 windows in the garage were intact. No sign of a break-in. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and reset the alarm. Then I searched every closet, under every bed, shaking as I went. Nothing. Still, I slept that night with the bedroom door locked and the gun under my pillow. For the rest of the week, I couldn't relax. When my parents came home, my dad inspected everything. No damage to the garage windows, no forced entry marks. Their theory? Maybe the door wasn't fully latched, and a draft blew it open. But I know what I felt that night. Something, or someone, was in my house. 6 years later, I still think about it. About the what-ifs. If we hadn't had an alarm system, if I hadn't had that gun, if whoever opened that door didn't leave when the siren blared. It's the reason I'll never sleep in an empty house without checking every lock twice. And it's the reason, no matter what anyone says, I believe something was there that night, watching, waiting. I never imagined something as simple as staying home alone would turn into the scariest night of my life. My name is Lucas. I'm 16, and if you had asked me 3 months ago whether I believed in real danger lurking outside your own home, I probably would have laughed. I thought our neighborhood was safe. We live in a quiet place called Oak Ridge Estates, surrounded by neat lawns and families who wave when they drive by. Bad things didn't happen here, or so I thought. That night changed everything. It all started on a Saturday morning. My parents were buzzing around the house, getting ready for a family friend's wedding out of town. It was a big deal, the kind of wedding where everyone dresses up, takes a million photos, and dances for hours. They asked if I wanted to come, but honestly, the thought of wearing a suit and pretending to enjoy adult conversations sounded like torture. "You're sure you don't want to come?" Mom asked again as she stood by the front door, her purse slung over her shoulder. Her perfume filled the room, strong and flowery. "Positive," I said, trying not to roll my eyes. "I'll be fine, Mom. Seriously." Dad chuckled from the hallway as he adjusted his tie. "He's 16, honey. I think he can handle a night alone." "Exactly," I said with a grin. "And I've got Coco, Max, and Diesel. Trust me, nobody's messing with this house." Those were my dogs, my family, really. Coco was our golden retriever, sweet and calm, always following me around like a shadow. Max and Diesel were my pit bulls, big, muscular, and intimidating to anyone who didn't know them. But to me, they were goofballs. The kind of dogs that thought they were lap dogs even though they weighed more than some people I knew. Mom still looked worried. "Call me if you need anything. And Lucas, don't open the door for anyone, I mean it." "I won't," I promised. She hesitated a second longer, then finally kissed my forehead and left with Dad. I watched their car pull out of the driveway and disappear down the street. The silence after they left felt different. Big. The house seemed almost too quiet. But I didn't mind. I liked having the place to myself. No rules, no nagging, just me, my dogs, and Netflix. I made popcorn, grabbed a soda, and collapsed onto the couch. The dogs sprawled around the living room, Max and Diesel flopped on the rug like twin bodyguards, and Coco curled up beside me. Life was good. For a while, everything was normal. I watched movies, scrolled on my phone, and even played a few rounds on my PlayStation. Hours flew by. It was around 8:30 p.m., when I decided to let the dogs out in the backyard before starting another movie. I slid open the glass door and whistled. "Go on, guys. Do your thing." Max and Diesel bounded outside, tails wagging. The cool night air drifted in, carrying the faint scent of rain. I stood there for a second, watching them sniff around the yard. That's when I heard it, the barking. Sharp, aggressive. It wasn't their usual playful bark. This was different. Warning barks. My stomach tightened. I stepped closer to the glass door, peering out into the dim yard. The motion light flicked on, casting a pale glow over the grass. Max and Diesel stood rigid, muscles tense, teeth bared. Their eyes were fixed on the back fence. And then I saw her. A woman. Standing on the other side of the fence, half hidden by the shadows. She looked like she was in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. About 5 feet 5 inches, thin, with messy brown hair that hung past her shoulders. Even from a few feet away, I could smell cigarettes on her clothes. "You have such beautiful dogs," she said, her voice low and raspy. Her smile was off, too wide, too forced. "Can I pet them?" My heart thudded in my chest. Sorry," I said quickly, staying inside. "They don't really like strangers." Her smile faded, slowly. Her eyes locked on mine, and the look she gave me, God, I can still see it. Like I'd just insulted her, like she hated me. I forced a polite smile, opened the door just enough to whistle the dogs back inside, and slammed it shut the second they crossed the threshold. I locked it, checked it twice. When I looked back, she was gone. Trying to shake off the unease, I herded the dogs into my room, the farthest one from the backyard, and locked the bedroom door too. My hands were trembling as I grabbed my phone and texted Mom. Me. Some weird woman was in the backyard asking to pet the dogs. Mom. That's strange. Probably someone from the apartments. Stay inside, okay? We'll be home late. Keep everything locked. I tried to calm down, but the dogs were restless. Max kept pacing, growling under his breath. Diesel sat by the door, ears perked, muscles coiled like a spring. That made me more uneasy than anything. About 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. All 3 dogs exploded, barking like maniacs. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. Who the hell was at the door? I didn't move, I didn't even breathe. The ringing stopped. Silence. I was just starting to relax when I heard it, clicking at my window. Slow, deliberate, like someone was testing the latch. Every muscle in my body locked up. My brain screamed at me to stay quiet. I grabbed my phone, hands slick with sweat, and muted the TV. The clicking stopped. For a second, I thought maybe I imagined it. Then came the sound that shattered me. Glass breaking. Not from my house, from next door. I crawled to the window and peeled back the curtain just enough to see. My neighbor's house. The lights were off, but I saw movement inside. A shadow slipping through the broken back window. Her. That same woman. I dialed 911 so fast my hands barely worked. 911, what's your emergency? There's a break-in, I whispered, my voice shaking. My neighbor's house. Someone broke in. I saw her. Please send someone. Stay on the line, the operator said calmly. Officers are on their way. How many suspects? Just one that I saw. A woman. She. A scream ripped through the night. From my neighbor's house. My stomach dropped. I looked again. My neighbor, Mr. Hernandez, burst into view, wrestling the woman to the ground. She fought like an animal, shrieking, clawing at him. She's attacking him. Oh my God, I yelled into the phone. Sirens wailed in the distance. Relief hit me like a wave, but it didn't last. Because in the chaos, the woman's head snapped toward my house. Her eyes locked on my window like she knew I'd been watching. And she smiled. When the cops stormed in, they had to tase her. Twice. She was thrashing, spitting, screaming things that made my skin crawl. I'm gonna kill that boy. I'll burn his house down, him and those dogs. They found a knife. And a gun. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. I just sat there clutching Max and Diesel like they were the only thing keeping me alive. The cops dragged her away, still cursing, still fighting. My parents came home hours later to find me curled up on the floor with the dogs, tears dried on my face. For days after, I couldn't sleep without the dogs on my bed. Every creak of the house made my chest tighten. And that glare, her eyes burning into me, it still visits me in the dark. If she'd chosen my house instead of my neighbor's, I wouldn't be here telling this story. Stay safe. Lock your doors. You never know who's watching. I was 9 years old the day everything changed. It was the start of summer vacation, and I remember feeling on top of the world. No school, no homework, just cartoons, cereal, and endless hours of freedom. My parents had both left for work early that morning. Dad was on the day shift at the factory, and Mom had a full schedule at the dental office. It wasn't the first time I'd been left home alone, but it was still rare enough to feel exciting, like a little adventure. The house was quiet, sun filtering through the blinds. I'd just stepped out of the shower, water still dripping from my hair, the smell of my strawberry shampoo clinging to the steam in the bathroom. I brushed my teeth, humming some tune I had stuck in my head from a TV commercial. Then I went to my room, threw on my favorite outfit, pink shorts and a matching t-shirt with a little unicorn on the front. I remember feeling proud of that outfit. It made me feel older somehow, like I could be one of the girls in the magazines Mom left on the coffee table. After getting dressed, I padded down the hall in my socks, into the living room, and set myself up for the morning. A glass of juice, a little bowl of chips, and the remote in hand. The glow of the TV flickered across the walls, some cartoons playing as I curled up on the couch. Everything felt safe, everything felt normal. And then the phone rang. It startled me a little because the sound was so sharp compared to the soft buzz of the TV. Back then, we still had a landline, a beige cordless phone that sat on its base in the kitchen. It was rare for it to ring in the morning, and when it did, it was usually Mom checking in or Dad saying hi. So, without thinking, I hopped up and walked across the house. The phone rang again as I reached the counter. I grabbed it, pressed talk, and said, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was familiar, warm even. It sounded like one of those safe voices, like a family friend or maybe someone Mom worked with. He said my name, asked how my morning was going. I remember this weird rush of comfort because, well, I was 9, and it felt nice that someone cared. I told him I was fine, that I just had breakfast, and he chuckled like he really knew me. Then he asked, "What are you wearing?" I didn't even think that was weird at first. I told him, "Pink shorts and a unicorn shirt." He laughed softly and said, "Pink, huh? Is that your favorite color?" And that was when something in my stomach shifted. Not really," I mumbled. There was this pause just long enough for my skin to prickle, and then his voice changed. It dropped into something dark and ragged, like a growl scraping across glass. "You look so pretty in that pink outfit." My throat closed. My brain scrambled, trying to figure out what that meant, how he could possibly know. I think I whispered, "What?" because I didn't understand. I couldn't. He laughed, low and ugly. Then he said things a 9-year-old should never hear. Things so graphic and sick that I still can't bring myself to repeat them. Not even now, decades later. I froze. My heart slammed so hard I could feel it in my ears. My skin burned. My hands started shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I slammed the talk button and hung up. For a second, I just stood there, gripping the counter, staring at the phone like it was alive. My thoughts were a mess. Was this a prank? Did I imagine it? But no. The sound of his voice still crawled in my ears. He saw me. He knew. Then the phone rang again. The sound tore through me like electricity. My knees nearly buckled. I didn't answer. It stopped, then started again, over and over. Each ring drilled deeper, until my whole body felt like a live wire. I grabbed the phone and called Mom at work, crying so hard I could barely speak. "Someone's watching me. He called me. He said. Mom's voice was sharp, annoyed. "Why did you answer the phone? I told you not to. Just go watch TV, stop being dramatic." "No, Mom, he knows what I'm wearing. He said he's gonna—" "That's enough. I can't leave work for this. Just don't answer the phone again, you're fine." She hung up. I stared at the receiver in shock, my chest heaving. I didn't feel fine. I felt like someone was right outside the window, maybe even in the house. My gut screamed at me to run, but where? I pulled the curtains shut so fast the rod rattled. Every shadow looked like him. Every creak sounded like a footstep. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was relentless. Ring. Silence. Ring. Silence. Each pause filled with the image of him creeping closer, smiling. I couldn't take it. I called 911, my voice a choked whisper. "I'm home alone and someone's watching me and he said he's gonna kill me. Please, please." The operator was calm, soothing. She told me to stay on the line, that help was coming. But I kept imagining him behind me, knife in hand. My skin crawled, my lungs locked up. In a blind panic, I slammed the alarm button by the door, the one my parents always said was for emergencies, and bolted outside barefoot. The sunlight hit me like a lifeline. I could hear birds, a lawnmower down the street, the ordinary sounds of summer. But inside that phone was still ringing like some living thing calling me back. A neighbor saw me and rushed over. He kept me close, shielding me, asking what happened. My words tumbled out between sobs. Then, sirens. The sweetest sound I've ever heard. It felt like hours, but it was probably minutes before the police car pulled into our driveway. An officer crouched to my level, voice soft, asking questions I didn't know how to answer. "How do you tell a grown man the things you just heard when you're only 9? I left most of it out. I just kept repeating. "He said he was watching me. He said he was gonna kill me." Then Mom showed up. Calm. Too calm. She walked over like nothing was wrong, smiling even. And then, she laughed. I stood frozen in the doorway, tears still on my face as she told the officer, "I'm so sorry about this. She must have gotten scared being home alone. Overreacted." Overreacted. Those words burned deeper than anything that man said on the phone. The officer nodded. Mom laughed again. And just like that, it was over. No investigation, no questions, just over. But it wasn't over. Not for me. The phone became my enemy. Every ring after that sent lightning through my nerves. I refused to stay home alone for years. And Mom? She decided it was the neighbor boy, a kid my age. I knew that was impossible, but she wouldn't hear it. Years later, at a family Christmas, I walked out of a bedroom and froze in the hallway. Mom was in the living room, laughing, telling that story like a joke. Everyone else looked sick. My oldest daughter saw me and gently pushed me back into the room, whispering, "Don't go in there." She just told them about the time a man threatened to kill you when you were a kid. Like it's funny. I never found out who it was. Never learned how he knew what I was wearing. But to this day, every time a phone rings, my stomach knots. And in the back of my mind, I still wonder if that man ever stopped watching me. I was 24 the night everything changed. Back then, I lived alone in a small 2-story townhouse on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood in Raleigh, North Carolina. It wasn't the kind of place where scary things happened. At least, that's what I told myself when I signed the lease 6 months earlier. I had left a toxic relationship, taken a fully remote job, and was ready for a fresh start. The townhouse was simple: kitchen and living room downstairs, 2 bedrooms upstairs. 1 bedroom was mine and the other was my makeshift office. My favorite thing about the place was the silence. No kids screaming, no loud parties, just peace. The unit next to mine had been empty for months. The property manager told me no one had even toured it in a while. That always gave me a strange comfort. No neighbors meant no drama. It was a Friday night in late October. Rain fell steadily outside, soft and rhythmic, like nature's white noise machine. I was upstairs in my office trying to knock out a few extra work tasks. My laptop glowed against the dim light of my desk lamp, the rest of the room cast in warm shadows. It had been a long week, and honestly, I was exhausted, but the thought of getting ahead on work made me push through. The only sounds were the clicking of my keyboard and the occasional creak of the old townhouse settling. Every so often, I'd glance out the window next to my desk, watching the rain trickle down the glass under the amber glow of the streetlight. Nights like this used to make me feel safe, cozy even, but that night that feeling would die quickly. It was just after 8 when I heard it. Thump. A solid, dull noise against the wall to my right. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, that wall connected to the empty unit. At first I brushed it off as maybe the wind or the rain somehow, but then it came again. Thump. This time, slower, heavier. My pulse picked up. What the hell? I muttered under my breath. After a few seconds of staring at the wall, I forced myself to relax. Maybe the property manager had stopped by. Maybe checking pipes or showing it late. Weird, but not impossible. I tried to refocus on work, but over the next hour I heard more noises, sporadic creaks, faint knocks, like someone walking slowly in the other unit. It wasn't constant, which somehow made it worse. Just when I'd start to feel okay again. Creak. By 9:30 I heard something that made my skin crawl, the distinct sound of a door opening. Slow, then closing. Harder this time, like someone pushed it shut. I sat there frozen, staring at the empty air in front of me. That's not normal, I whispered, heart thudding. I finally stood, every instinct telling me not to, and stepped into the hallway. My house was dead silent except for the faint patter of rain. I made my way downstairs, each step creaking softly under my weight. The living room was dark except for the weak glow of the streetlight through the blinds. I walked to the front door and peered out through the side window. No car in the driveway, no headlights on the road. Okay. Maybe they left already, I thought. Still, unease crawled up my spine like cold fingers. I checked the deadbolt, locked, then the back door also locked. Everything looked untouched. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Houses make noises, old walls settle, right? I went back upstairs telling myself I'd do 30 more minutes and then crash in bed. By 10, I was shutting down my laptop. I switched off the office light and stepped into the hallway. The upstairs felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. I went into my bedroom, turned on the bedside lamp, and started changing into sleep clothes. That's when it happened. A sound so out of place, so bone-chilling, that I almost dropped my phone. Whistling. Slow. Soft. A tune I didn't recognize. We. It wasn't cheerful. It wasn't rushed. It was calm. Deliberate. Almost playful. I froze, half bent over, staring at my bedroom door. No. I mouthed silently. My first thought, it can't be inside. It has to be outside. But as I crept closer to the door and cracked it open, the sound grew clearer, echoing faintly through the hallway. It was inside. I moved like a ghost down the stairs, heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribs might snap. My bare feet were silent against the carpet, but in my head, every breath sounded like a scream. The whistling didn't stop. It was steady, unhurried. When I reached the bottom, I pressed my back to the wall and peered around the corner toward the living room. That's when I saw him. A man, sitting in my armchair, facing the black TV screen. He didn't move except for the slow rise and fall of his shoulders. His head was slightly tilted, and his lips shaped the eerie tune that had hollowed out my chest. In the dim light, I could only make out his silhouette, but I saw something in his hand. A small metallic shape catching the faint glow from the blinds. A gun. I couldn't breathe. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs felt bolted to the floor. He had to know I was there. He had to have heard me, but he didn't turn. He just kept whistling, calm as death. I didn't think. I just moved. I bolted for the front door, ripping it open so hard it slammed the wall. Cold rain hit my skin as I ran barefoot into the night, my breath tearing out in harsh gasps. I didn't look back until I was at the end of the street, chest heaving, fingers numb as I fumbled for my phone. When I finally looked, the door to the empty unit next to mine stood wide open. The cops came fast. 2 cruisers, lights flashing red and blue against the rain. I pointed with a shaking hand, stammering through what happened. As they approached the door, the whistling started again. They could hear it too. That same slow, eerie tune drifting out into the wet night. Guns drawn, they went inside. What they found still makes my blood run cold. He was sitting in the exact same spot, same posture, same calm smile when he finally turned his head toward them. He dropped the gun without a word. Let them cuff him like it was nothing. They told me later they couldn't identify him. No fingerprints in any database. No ID. No explanation. He barely spoke a word during questioning. Some officers thought he wanted to be caught. Others thought he was mentally ill. But no one could tell me why my house. Why that night. Why that tune. I moved out within a week. But even now, nearly 2 years later, I'll wake in the dead of night, heart hammering, sure I can hear it again. That slow, soft whistle in the dark. I still remember the smell of wet asphalt that evening, like the storm was warning the world to stay inside. My name is Maya Carter. I was 16 then, living with my parents in a quiet, wooded neighborhood called Maple Hollow, about an hour outside the main city in North Carolina. It wasn't the middle of nowhere, but it felt close. Houses were spaced far apart, trees pressed against the property lines, and at night, the darkness outside swallowed everything. That day had started like any other miserable Tuesday. Overcast skies, that damp chill in the air that made you wish you'd stayed in bed. Everyone at school kept going on about the incoming storm, some big one blowing up from the coast. Tornado watches, flash flood warnings, the works. Honestly, I didn't care. My biggest concern was whether it would hit before I got home. It didn't. The rain held back long enough for me to walk through the front door, toss my backpack onto the couch, and collapse. Our house was old, mostly wood, 2 stories with narrow halls and small rooms. My bedroom was upstairs, the second door on the left. Downstairs, the living room opened to the kitchen, and the front door was maybe 8 feet from the couch. Everything felt familiar. Safe. When the storm finally rolled in around 4:30, it didn't knock politely. It slammed in like a freight train. The windows shuddered in their frames and the wind howled like something alive. The whole house groaned and creaked like an old man bracing against a punch. I turned up the TV, pretending not to notice how it made my stomach twist. Then my phone buzzed, a flash flood alert screaming at full volume. I jumped, cursed under my breath, and silenced it. Right then, Mom called. I answered fast, trying to sound calm. "Hey, everything okay?" Her voice was tight, quick, like she was in the middle of something. "Maya, listen. Your dad and I are stuck. Half the roads are flooded and the cops are blocking off the highway. We can't make it home tonight." My chest tightened. "What? So, you're not coming?" "No, sweetie. We're gonna grab a hotel in the city. You're safe there. Just stay inside, lock the doors, and don't go near any windows, okay?" The walls creaked again, and I looked toward the window where rain hammered like a fist. Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just watch TV or something." "Good girl. We'll call when we're settled. Stay on your phone." We hung up. The line clicked, leaving me with the roar of the storm and a sudden, aching silence in the house. I told myself it was fine. I'd been alone before, never during a storm this bad. But still. I wandered into the kitchen, my socks sliding on the wood floor, and popped a leftover plate of pasta in the microwave. As it hummed, I leaned against the counter and scrolled through my phone. That's when I heard it. Knocking. It was soft, muffled by the storm, a hollow thunk-thunk like wood on wood. I froze, head tilted. My brain tried to rationalize. Maybe a branch hit the siding, maybe debris blew onto the porch. The microwave beeped, making me flinch. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. Just the wind. Nothing else. I grabbed my food and flopped on the couch again. Netflix, comfort zone, ignore the storm. I had barely taken 2 bites when... Knock, knock, knock. This time I heard it clearly. The sound was sharp, deliberate, and it came from the front door. The door right next to me. Every muscle in my body locked up. I stared at the wood like I could see through it, heart pounding so hard it made my ribs ache. Nobody would be outside in this weather. Nobody. Seconds stretched like hours. When nothing happened, I forced myself to move. I crept to the peephole, every step loud in my own ears. The glass was fogged from condensation, but I could see the storm in blurry streaks of gray and black. No figures, no shapes. Just rain slashing sideways in sheets. Still. I cracked the door open, just an inch. Just enough to look. Empty porch, empty yard. Relief hit so fast it made me dizzy, until my eyes drifted down. Footprints. Dark impressions in the mud leading straight to the porch. The rain hadn't erased them yet, which meant they were fresh. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my breath coming fast and shallow. My hands shook as I double-checked the deadbolt. I told myself not to panic. Maybe someone needed help and left. Maybe it was a neighbor, though we barely had any nearby. I sat back down, set my food aside, and stared at the door until my eyes burned. Nothing. No sound. At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. When I woke, the world was black. The TV had timed out. The storm still raged like a beast outside. I reached for my phone. 3% battery, 6 missed calls, 4 texts from Mom. You okay? Roads still closed. Staying here tonight. Call us when you can. I rubbed my face and sat up, and froze. A sound drifted through the house. A single heavy thud. Not wind. Not wood shifting. A footstep. And it came from above me. From my bedroom. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Every instinct screamed, run. I slid off the couch as quietly as I could and padded to the downstairs bathroom. My fingers fumbled with the lock until it clicked. I turned my phone brightness down and dialed 911 with shaking hands. When the operator answered, I whispered, "My name is Maya Carter. I live at 214 West Hollow Road. Someone's in my house." She started asking questions, but I muted the call just enough to hear her faint voice. Footsteps creaked overhead. Slow. Deliberate. 1, 2, 3. They stopped, then started again, heading toward the stairs. I bit down on my fist to stop a sound from escaping. The steps reached the bottom landing. Then, silence. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. Seconds dragged like hours. The faint storm filled the gap. Then, the front door exploded with a bang. Voices shouted, "Police!" I bolted out, heart slamming against my ribs. 2 officers stood dripping on the porch. Behind me, the house was silent. They cleared every room. Upstairs, they found my bedroom door open, the window wide, curtains whipping in the wind. The sliding glass door in the kitchen was cracked open, rain pooling on the floor. He was gone. Whoever he was, he waited. He walked through my room. He searched for me. And if the storm hadn't drowned the sounds of him breaking in, or if I'd gone upstairs when I first heard the knocks, I wouldn't be writing this. To this day, I don't know who it was. Male, female, old, young. Someone random, or someone who knew me. What I do know, they were patient. They weren't there to steal. They were there for me. I never thought much about living alone. Honestly, I loved it. My name's Rachel Miller. and I'd spent the past 3 years in a cozy little house on Maplewood Drive, a quiet street in a suburban town called Brookhaven, about 40 minutes outside of a mid-sized city. It was the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happened. People waved when you drove by, lawns were always neatly trimmed, and the biggest concern was whether the local diner would ever fix its broken neon sign. Life was calm, almost boring, but I liked boring. After years of sharing apartments with noisy roommates during college and working double shifts at a hospital as a nurse, I appreciated peace. By the time spring rolled around that year, I was exhausted. My work schedule was brutal, 12-hour shifts, sometimes 6 days a week. Most nights, when I finally walked through my front door, I just wanted silence, a quick meal, and my couch. That night was no different, or at least it started that way. It was early April, one of those damp, bone-chilling nights where the rain had been pouring for days. My shift had ended late, around 8:30 p.m., and I remember the drive home feeling extra eerie. The roads were slick and empty, and fog clung to the pavement like a white sheet. Streetlights flickered in the distance, the whole town swallowed in that gloomy, wet darkness. When I pulled into my driveway at 9 p.m., my little blue SUV splashed through puddles. The neighborhood was quiet. No kids outside, no music from porches, just the steady drumming of rain on rooftops. Most houses were dark except for a few warm windows glowing faintly behind curtains. I killed the engine, grabbed my work bag, and jogged up to my porch through the rain. The moment I stepped inside, the comfort of home hit me. Warm air, the faint smell of lavender from the candle I'd left earlier, and silence, pure silence. I kicked off my soaked sneakers, hung my jacket, and changed into an old hoodie and sweatpants. After a day like that, all I wanted was leftovers and something brainless on TV. I popped a container of chicken and rice into the oven and curled up on the couch with a blanket. The rain tapping against the windows was oddly soothing. For a few minutes, it felt like the world outside didn't exist. But then came the knock. It was loud, firm, not the polite kind of knock you'd expect from a neighbor. I froze mid-bite, heart thudding. Who the hell could that be at this hour in the pouring rain? I got up slowly, my bare feet silent against the hardwood. The living room lights were on, which meant whoever was outside could probably see shadows moving inside. I approached the door and peeked through the peephole. A man stood there on my porch. He was drenched, water dripping from his black rain jacket onto the mat. His dark hair clung to his forehead, and his face was pale under the porch light. He looked tired, droopy eyes, stiff expression, maybe early 30s. He wasn't someone I recognized, not a neighbor, not anyone I'd seen jogging or walking a dog before. I hesitated but cracked the door just enough to speak. "Can I help you?" His eyes met mine, and for a moment he didn't answer. Just stared with this blank, almost lifeless look that made my stomach tighten. Then, slowly, he said, "My dog got out, jumped the fence. I was wondering if you'd seen him." Relief hit me at first. Okay, a missing dog. That explains it. Still, something about the way he spoke felt off, like he had to think about every word. "I haven't, sorry," I said, offering a sympathetic smile. "Hope you find him, though." He nodded, eyes flicking past me into the house for a fraction of a second before landing back on my face. Then he turned without another word and walked off the porch into the rain. I closed the door slowly, locking it this time. Weird guy, I thought. Maybe he's just exhausted and stressed. Losing a pet sucks. Still, that look in his eyes stuck with me. I tried to shake it off and went back to my couch, turning up the volume on the TV. For a while, things felt normal again. 15 minutes later, it happened again. A loud, sharp knock. My body went cold instantly. I knew before I even looked who it was. When I opened the door, sure enough, it was him. Same rain-soaked jacket, same dead expression. But this time, there was something different in his eyes. Something harder. like frustration simmering under the surface. "What is it?" I asked, my voice firmer this time. He pointed toward the side of my house. "I saw him run into your backyard. Can I go back there and look?" The way he said it, it wasn't a question. It was flat, demanding, almost. My instincts screamed no, but my brain kept trying to rationalize. Maybe he really did see the dog. Maybe this was all innocent. But why did his tone sound so wrong? Why did his face look so empty? Yeah, I said finally, forcing calm into my voice. "You can walk around." His gaze held mine for a second too long. Then he said, "Thank you." As I started closing the door, he stepped forward slightly, like he thought I was going to let him inside to lead him through. My heart jumped. I shut the door fully, locking it. I moved to the kitchen where I could watch through the glass back door. At first, I saw him pacing slowly along the fence line, head turning as if scanning for something. But every few seconds, he'd glance back toward the house. I told myself, just let him look. He'll leave. But then, I turned back for a split second, and when I looked again, his face was right up against the glass. I jerked backward so hard my hip slammed into the counter. My breath caught in my throat. He didn't move, just stared through the glass like he was looking through me. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the deck. His hand rested on the glass like he was testing the door. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, my voice trembling. He tilted his head slightly. "I think he might be inside. Can you let me in to check?" My stomach dropped. "No, he's not in here. You need to leave." But he didn't move. His hand started pressing harder against the glass, his expression twisting, anger bleeding through that blank mask. Then a bang. Then another. He was hitting the glass with his palm. Over and over. "Just let me in. Let me in." Panic surged through me. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The moment he saw the phone, everything changed. His body stilled. His face went blank again. And then, just like that, he turned and walked into the rain. The cops arrived about 10 minutes later. By then, he was long gone. They took my statement, asked for a description, and told me they'd patrol the area. But there wasn't much else they could do. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every shadow outside made my heart lurch. I kept replaying the way his face looked through the glass, the emptiness, then the anger. A week later, I found out through a local news alert what he was really doing. Another woman, just 2 streets over, opened her door to a man looking for his dog. She didn't make it. They never said all the details, just that it turned violent fast. Reading that article made me sick to my stomach, because I realized something chilling. If I had unlocked that door, even for a second, I might not be here to tell this story. I still remember that summer like it was yesterday. It was mid-July, the kind of heat that makes the air feel heavy, and I had just turned 16 a few months back. Life was pretty normal. School was out, I had no job, and my only real responsibilities were keeping the house somewhat clean and making sure my younger brothers didn't destroy it when Mom was home. Back then, we were living in a duplex in Brookhaven, a small neighborhood that was quiet most of the time. Our unit was on the 3rd floor of a 3-story building, which meant plenty of stairs and those long, dim hallways that always seemed a little too quiet. It wasn't the worst place we'd ever lived, but there was something about it that never felt right. I can't explain it, just this underlying unease I could never shake. Our family was big: Mom, Dad, my 3 younger brothers, all under the age of 5, and my older sister Olivia, who was 18. Olivia was the cool one, the one who always had plans, always dressed like she was going somewhere important. I looked up to her more than I'd ever admit. That summer was weird, though. Dad was working construction, sometimes pulling 12-hour shifts. Mom spent a lot of time taking the kids out to keep them busy: parks, pools, play dates. Olivia either worked at her job or stayed out late with friends. That meant a lot of days where I was completely alone in the apartment. Honestly, I didn't mind at first. Being home alone was kind of nice. No screaming toddlers, no mom asking why the dishes weren't done yet, no Olivia barging into my room without knocking. Just peace. Or so I thought. That day started like any other. I woke up around 11 a.m., sunlight streaming through the thin curtains in my room. The fan was running, stirring the hot air just enough to make it bearable. I lay there for a few minutes scrolling on my phone, half watching TikToks before I finally dragged myself out of bed. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the distant sound of someone's TV through the wall. I made myself a bowl of cereal, sat on the couch, and mindlessly watched YouTube for an hour before remembering Mom's list of chores sitting on the counter. Wash the dishes, sweep the living room, do a load of laundry. I sighed and shoved the empty cereal bowl into the sink. I figured I'd start with the laundry since it would take the longest. Here's the thing about that apartment. Each floor had about 10 units and just one shared laundry room. It was near the stairwell, which I always hated passing because the door had this little square window that looked out into the stairwell landing, and no matter how many times I told myself it was nothing, I always felt like something could be on the other side, watching. I grabbed the overflowing basket from the bathroom and stepped into the hallway. The air out there always felt different, cooler, quieter. My flip-flops slapped against the scuffed linoleum as I made my way down the hall, the sound echoing in a way that made me feel exposed. The laundry room door creaked when I opened it. Inside, the fluorescent light flickered like it was struggling to stay alive, and the hum of the machines filled the cramped space. I tossed the clothes into the washer, added detergent, and started the cycle. The door thumped shut behind me, and I exhaled, relieved to leave that claustrophobic little room. That's when I heard it for the first time. Click, click, click. I froze, my hand still on the door handle. The sound was faint but sharp, like the click of a lighter that wouldn't catch. I glanced around. The hallway was empty and the sound had already stopped. I shook my head, muttering to myself, probably someone's door lock or something, and headed back to the apartment. The rest of the afternoon was quiet. I did the dishes, swept the floor, and even wiped down the counters just to feel productive. I left the TV on for background noise while I scrolled through Instagram, trying to ignore that prickling sensation between my shoulder blades, the one that made me keep glancing at the door like I expected someone to knock. Around 2:30, I figured it was time to move the clothes to the dryer. I grabbed my keys and stepped back into the hallway. The air felt heavier this time, almost humid, even though the building always blasted cold air in the summer. My footsteps echoed too loudly as I walked past the stairwell. That's when I heard it again. Click, click, click. The sound was louder now, deliberate. I slowed, my pulse quickening. It was coming from the stairwell. I told myself not to look, but curiosity won. I turned my head and peeked through the little square window in the stairwell door. Nothing. Just the empty landing and the metal railing lit by that harsh yellow light. I let out a shaky laugh and hurried to the laundry room, moving the clothes to the dryer with clumsy, trembling hands. My skin prickled like something was crawling over it, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing just out of sight, waiting. I slammed the dryer door shut, hit start, and nearly ran back to the apartment. Once inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart thudding in my ears. "You're fine," I whispered to myself. "You're just freaking yourself out." But then, click, 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 louder this time. I muted the TV and stood there, every muscle in my body rigid. The sound was coming from the hallway, slow, methodical clicks, like someone wanted me to hear them. Then came the footsteps, heavy, measured, drawing closer. My stomach dropped. I tiptoed to the door and pressed my eye to the peephole, my breath caught in my throat. What I saw made my blood run cold. A figure, all black, not just clothing, its entire form, like a silhouette carved out of darkness. It stood completely still, its back to me. Then it tilted its head slightly and that sound came again. Click, Click. Click. I stumbled back from the door, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? Call Olivia? What would I even say? Grabbing my cats, Jasper and Luna, I bolted to my room, slammed the door, and locked it. I sat on the bed, clutching them to my chest, listening for any sound over the pounding of my heartbeat. After what felt like an eternity, the front door opened. "Emma?" Olivia's voice echoed through the apartment. Relief flooded me, and I ran out of my room so fast I nearly tripped. "Jesus, what's your problem?" she said, dropping her bag on the counter. I told her everything, the laundry room, the clicking, the figure. At first she laughed, but when I described it, her face went pale. "Wait, what did it look like?" she asked quietly. "Just black. Like a shadow, but solid." Her eyes widened. "I've seen it too." She explained that she'd noticed it before, in the hallway when she came home late, or in the corner of dark rooms. Always just standing there. That night I begged her to let me sleep in her room. She agreed, probably because she was freaked out too. We left the nightlight on. The fan hummed softly. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Click, click, click. But this time it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from under the bed. Jasper hissed, his fur puffed out, and then I saw it. A long, black, bony arm sliding out from beneath the bed, fingers curling against the floor. I couldn't even scream at first. Then instinct kicked in and I yelped loud enough to wake Olivia. "What the hell, Emma?" she groaned, sitting up. But when I looked again, the arm was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. A few months later we moved, and I swear I've never been so relieved. Nothing weird has happened since. Whatever that thing was, I hope it stayed in that apartment. I never thought one quiet Saturday night would stay with me forever. It was late October, cool nights, warm afternoons, and that sharp scent of fallen leaves hanging in the air. I was 17 back then, living in a peaceful suburban neighborhood that felt so safe it was almost boring. The kind of place where neighbors waved when you walked your dog and everyone knew each other's names. Nothing bad ever happened there, or at least that's what I believed. My parents, Mark and Rachel, had decided to go out for dinner that evening. They didn't do that often. Dad wasn't much of a social butterfly, and Mom preferred takeout over crowded restaurants. But it was their anniversary. They deserved it. "You sure you'll be okay for a few hours?" Mom asked before leaving. She had that soft, motherly tone, the kind that was both caring and cautious. "Mom, I'm 17, I reminded her with a smile. "Not 7. We'll be fine." By we, I meant me and Lily, my little sister. She was 13 going on 30, at least in attitude. Lily peeked from behind her phone. "We're not babies," she added without looking up, thumbs flying across the screen. Mom looked unconvinced, but Dad chuckled and said, "They'll survive. Call us if you need anything, okay?" "Got it," I said, giving a mock salute. With that, they were gone, leaving behind the soft echo of the door closing and the distant hum of their car pulling out of the driveway. The house felt bigger instantly, quieter, like it was holding its breath. I kicked off my sneakers, grabbed a blanket, and flopped onto the couch in the living room. Our house wasn't huge, just a 2-story with a cozy vibe. The living room had a big sliding glass door that opened to the backyard, which was great during the day, but turned into a black void at night. Beside that was a hallway leading to the front door, which had a little frosted glass panel that let in just enough light from the street lamp outside. Lily joined me with a bowl of popcorn the size of her head. "Horror movie night?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Why do you always want to watch scary stuff when Mom and Dad aren't here?" I groaned, scrolling through Netflix. "Because it's fun," she grinned. "Come on, don't be a chicken." I rolled my eyes but hit play on The Conjuring. If I was going to suffer, I might as well do it with something good. The opening credits rolled, and for a while, everything felt normal. The only sounds were the movie, the occasional crunch of popcorn, and the low hum of the heater kicking in. I even forgot for a moment that we were alone. Then, about 40 minutes in, right at one of those unnervingly quiet scenes, we heard it. A sound that sliced through the movie's silence like a knife. The metallic rattle of a key sliding into the front door lock. I froze. So did Lily. Our eyes met over the glow of the TV. The sound came again, clearer this time, the deliberate turn of the knob. My first thought was Dad. It had to be. They weren't supposed to be home yet, but maybe their dinner ended early. "Dad?" I called out, trying to keep my voice casual. "You back already?" No answer. I sat up straighter, my heart starting to pick up speed. "Dad, that you?" I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. Lily's face was pale in the flickering light of the TV. "Why isn't he saying anything?" she whispered. Before I could answer, the knob turned again, slowly, purposefully. Then, the soft creak of the door opening. I shot off the couch so fast the blanket tangled around my legs. The door opened only an inch, just enough to cast a deeper shadow into the entryway, but no one stepped in. "Dad?" My voice cracked this time. Silence. The air felt wrong, thick, heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. Behind me, Lily was clutching a throw pillow like a shield. Her voice trembled when she said, "That's not Dad." My stomach dropped. She was right. Dad would have said something. He always did. Before I could move, we both heard it, a scuffling sound from behind us, from the backyard, right outside the sliding glass door. Lily gasped, spinning toward the glass. The curtains were half drawn, the blackness beyond pressing against the glass like a living thing. Don't go near it," she stammered, but I was already moving. Not toward the glass, but toward the hallway phone. My hands shook as I grabbed it, only to realize with a sick twist in my gut. The line was dead. "What?" I whispered, staring at the silent receiver. "I'm getting a knife," Lily said suddenly, bolting toward the kitchen. "Wait!" I hissed, but she was gone. My pulse thundered in my ears as I crept toward the sliding door, drawn by some horrible mix of fear and curiosity. I eased the curtain back just enough to peek outside. Nothing. Just the vague outlines of trees swaying in the night breeze. I exhaled shakily and turned, only to freeze when I saw the front door. It was closed. Locked. But I know what I heard. And then, the doorknob moved again. Slow, twisting, pressing against the deadbolt like something or someone was testing it. My breath caught in my throat. That's when Lily returned, gripping the biggest kitchen knife we owned, her knuckles white. "What do we do?" she whispered. I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, a soft tap came from the sliding glass door. Once. Twice. Like a fingernail on glass. We both whipped around. The curtains swayed gently, though there was no breeze inside. Lily's hand tightened on the knife. The tap came again, louder this time. My legs felt like they might give out, but I forced myself to move. I grabbed Lily's arm and dragged her toward the stairs. Upstairs. Now. We ran, the house groaning under our feet, the darkness in every corner suddenly alive. Halfway up the stairs, we heard the sound that will haunt me forever, the slow slide of the front door unlocking. We froze mid-step. That sound, so sharp, so deliberate, cut through the house like a blade. Click. The deadbolt. "Oh my God," Lily whispered, her voice a broken thread of sound. "Run!" I hissed, yanking her up the remaining steps. We bolted into my bedroom, slamming the door behind us. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the lock, fumbling to click it into place. It felt like trying to fight a fire with a paper cup. "Call 911, Lily gasped, shoving the knife at me while she grabbed her phone from her hoodie pocket. I held the knife with both hands, my fingers slick with sweat. My ears strained for every sound. Downstairs, the front door creaked open, slow, heavy, like someone savoring the moment. Oh God, oh God. Lily's breath came in sobs as she pressed her phone to her ear. Then, silence. She stared at the screen, face crumpling. No service, she whispered. My stomach turned to ice. Of course. That storm earlier had messed with the towers. I remembered Dad complaining about it. Thud. A footstep. Not rushed, not clumsy. Measured. Like whoever was down there wanted us to know. I backed toward the closet, pulling Lily with me. In. Quiet. We squeezed inside, the dark swallowing us whole. I pulled the door almost shut, leaving a sliver of space. Lily was shaking so hard I could feel it through her sweatshirt. I pressed my finger to my lips, begging her without words. The footsteps reached the stairs. One by one, slow and steady. Wood creaked like a scream in the silence. Halfway up they stopped. We waited. Every muscle locked. The house was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my skull. Then, a voice. Low, calm, almost friendly. I know you're up here. Lily's hand flew to her mouth to stifle a sob. Not gonna hurt you, the voice said. Just want to talk. Another step, and another. I gripped the knife so tight my fingers ached. My mind was screaming, jump out the window, make a run for it, do something. But my body wouldn't move. The steps reached the landing. Our door handle rattled. Locked. Thank God. A soft chuckle floated through the air. Smart girls. The knob stilled. For a second, I thought, hope, that he'd leave. Then came the sound that shattered that hope. The sharp crack of wood as the door splintered. Once, twice. He was kicking it in. Lily whimpered into my shoulder. The closet felt like a coffin closing in. The door burst open. Boots on carpet. Slow, deliberate. I held my breath as a shadow stretched across the sliver of light between the closet doors. His breathing was calm, steady, like he had all the time in the world. A hand closed around the closet handle. I raised the knife. Every muscle in my arm screamed. The door slid open. Light spilled in. A face followed, pale, sharp-featured, eyes that looked too calm for this moment. He smiled. Found you. I swung, wild, desperate. The knife slashed his forearm. He cursed, jerking back, and that was all the opening we needed. Run, I screamed, shoving Lily out of the closet. We barreled past him, down the hall, down the stairs. My bare feet slipped on the hardwood, but I didn't stop. The front door was wide open, black night yawning beyond. We didn't look back. We didn't dare. The cold air hit my lungs like knives as we tore across the yard, screaming for help. Porch lights flicked on. A dog barked. A neighbor shouted something. I don't even know what. By the time the police arrived, he was gone, just gone. Like smoke. All they found were muddy boot prints leading through the house and out the back door. No fingerprints, no car, nothing. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without the lights on. Lily wouldn't stay in a room alone. Mom and Dad never left us home again. Not that we would have let them. And me? I still hear it sometimes in the dead of night. The slow creak of a door, the whisper of boots on carpet, and that calm voice saying, I know you're up here. Because whoever he was, he never got caught. And I don't think he ever stopped looking. I never thought moving out on my own would end up being one of the most terrifying decisions of my life. Back in early summer of 2013, I was 23 years old and finally ready to start fresh. I had just landed a stable job at a logistics company, and with a little money saved, I signed a lease on a one-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized suburban town called Brookfield Heights. It wasn't luxurious by any means, white walls, thin carpet, and the faint smell of old paint. But it was mine, and that feeling of independence was everything I had wanted. My parents lived about an hour away in a quiet rural area, so they helped me move in on a sunny Saturday morning. I remember them leaving after unloading the last box, hugging me tightly, telling me to call if I needed anything. When they drove off, I stood in the middle of my small living room surrounded by cardboard boxes, feeling proud, and maybe just a little nervous about living alone for the first time. That first day, as I unpacked, I heard a thump from above, loud enough that I actually froze for a moment. Then another thump, like something heavy dropping on the floor. I brushed it off as someone moving furniture, just a neighbor getting settled, nothing unusual. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing a pattern. The noises didn't stop. In fact, they grew worse. Heavy stomping, loud bangs, and sometimes what sounded like someone slamming furniture against the walls. I'd be sitting on my couch reading and hear something so forceful that my own ceiling light rattled. At first, I tried to ignore it. Apartment living comes with noise, right? I told myself it was normal. But then came the shouting. It started with muffled arguments, then escalated into full-blown screaming matches. A man and a woman, voices rising, words so harsh they made me cringe even though I couldn't hear every detail. It didn't matter if it was 3 p.m. or 1 a.m. Their fights were loud, constant, and violent in tone. One night around 12:30 a.m., I was lying in bed scrolling on my phone when I heard it again. This time the fight was worse than ever. "You walk out that door and you'll regret it," a man's voice bellowed. "Move! Get out of my way!" the woman shouted back, her voice shaking with anger or fear. Then bang! A loud crash shook my ceiling, followed by what sounded like glass shattering. My heart jumped. I sat upright in bed, phone clutched in my hand, debating whether to call the police. Before I could decide, I heard hurried footsteps, someone running down the hallway upstairs. Then the front door to the building opened and slammed shut. Silence followed. I lay there, pulse pounding in my ears. Curiosity got the best of me. I threw on a hoodie, slipped on some shoes, and quietly opened my door. The hallway smelled faintly of something burnt, maybe from their apartment. I crept up the stairs just enough to peek. Their door was wide open. The man appeared suddenly, stepping into the doorway. He was tall, mid-30s, messy dark hair, a thin scar along his jawline. His eyes locked on me immediately. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was low but sharp, full of hostility. I swallowed hard. I heard yelling. "Is everything okay?" He glared, his chest rising and falling fast like he'd just run a marathon. "Everything's fine. Mind your own business." Before I could say another word, slam. He shut the door so hard the frame rattled. I stood there frozen for a few seconds, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I backed away slowly and returned to my apartment, locking my door behind me. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the building made me jump. Should I have called the police? What if someone was hurt? But what if this guy figured out it was me? What if he came after me? The next few days were strangely quiet. No fights, no crashes. I hoped maybe she had left him, maybe it was over. I was wrong. 2 nights later, I was dead asleep when a loud thud outside my door jolted me awake. Groggy and confused, I grabbed my phone and padded to the peephole. At first, nothing. Then I saw them. 2 men walking down the hallway toward the stairs. They weren't neighbors, I'd never seen them before. Both were big, broad-shouldered, wearing dark hoodies. They walked with purpose, not like they were visiting a friend for a casual chat. I got this awful feeling in my gut. The outside door was always locked. How did they get in? Did someone let them in? Or did they have a key? They left after a few minutes, and I exhaled in relief, thinking they were gone. But not even 10 minutes later, I heard the door downstairs again, then heavy footsteps climbing the stairs. I looked through the peephole once more. The same 2 men were back, and this time, the man from upstairs came down to meet them. Their voices were low at first, but then they started shouting. One of the strangers grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the wall, right next to my door. The impact shook my frame so hard I nearly screamed. "You ever go near my sister again, I swear to God I'll cut your throat," one of the men roared. "Wait, please." The upstairs guy's voice cracked with panic. Then came the sound of fists, hard, sickening thuds against flesh. He groaned in pain, begging them to stop. I was crouched on the floor, hands over my mouth, heart pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. I didn't dare look through the peephole again. Finally, after what felt like forever, I heard their footsteps recede. The door downstairs slammed shut, and silence. I stayed there on the floor for a long time, trembling. I had just witnessed a beating and a death threat inches from where I sat. Should I call the cops now? What if they came back and knew it was me? I didn't call. Fear won that night. The upstairs guy moved out 2 days later. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. When my lease ended, I packed up and left too. I didn't care about the penalty for breaking early. I couldn't live with the memory of that night burned into my brain. Now, years later, I own a small condo. Quiet neighborhood, no shared walls, no unknown footsteps in the hall. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is silent, I swear I still hear that echo. If you ever go near my sister again, I'll cut your throat. Those words, and the sound of fists slamming against the wall by my door, will haunt me forever. I was 13 the night everything changed for me. Back then, life wasn't perfect, but it felt safe, or at least I thought it did. My name is Ethan Ward, and in the fall of 2004, I lived with my dad, Carl, and my older brother, Ryan, in a small duplex on the outskirts of Fairgrove, Illinois. Our place was nothing special, a faded yellow duplex at the end of a quiet street, with a tiny backyard enclosed by an old wooden fence that leaned slightly from years of storms. The inside was cramped, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small living room, and an outdated kitchen with peeling vinyl floors. Ryan had his own room because at 17 he acted like royalty. That meant I shared a room with Dad. It wasn't great, but I was used to it. The thing about our home was that it always felt temporary, like we were just passing through. Maybe that was because of Mom. She left when I was 8, and after that, nothing felt steady anymore. Dad worked all the time as a mechanic, and Ryan was barely ever home. Most nights it was just me and the low hum of the old box TV for company. This night wasn't supposed to be any different. It was a Saturday in late October, cool outside with that dry chill that made the air feel thinner. The sky turned black early, and by the time I finished dinner, the house was already swallowed in silence. Dad had left around 8 p.m., muttering something about meeting the guys for a few beers. Ryan had been gone since the afternoon. Before leaving, Dad poked his head into the living room where I sat cross-legged on the carpet, controller in hand. "You good here, kiddo?" he asked, pulling on his jacket. "Yeah," I said without looking away from the TV. Resident Evil's title screen glowed in front of me. The original game, the one with the clunky tank controls and those awful live-action cutscenes. "Lock the front door after me," Dad said, jingling his keys. "And don't stay up too late." I nodded. He knew I would anyway. The front door clicked shut. A moment later, the familiar sound of his old Chevy faded into the distance. I was alone. Not that it was unusual. I'd been left on my own plenty of times. At 13, I told myself I liked it. No rules, no yelling, no one hogging the TV. But when the house got quiet, really quiet, that knot in my stomach always tightened a little. Still, I shrugged it off and started my game. The hours slid by in a haze of static-filled screens and zombie groans. The glow from the TV was the only light in the living room, painting long, crooked shadows across the floor. Occasionally, a car passed outside, headlights flashing through the thin curtains. By the time I checked the clock, it was 12:04 a.m. My eyes burned from staring at the screen. I saved my progress and switched the console off, the sudden silence pressing in like a weight. I stretched, rubbed my eyes, and shuffled toward the back bedroom I shared with Dad. The carpet felt cold under my bare feet. The house creaked softly. Just the usual nighttime groans, I told myself. I didn't bother closing the bedroom door. I never did. I liked being able to hear if Dad or Ryan came home. I climbed into bed, pulled the thin blanket up to my chin, and let my thoughts drift. Sleep came quick. Shuck. A sound so sharp and distinct it yanked me out of the edge of sleep, the scraping grind of our old sliding glass door being forced open. My eyes flew open, my body stiff as stone. For a second I told myself I imagined it. Maybe it was a dream. But then, thump, thump, heavy footsteps, slow, steady, crossing the linoleum of the kitchen. My heart started hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Dad never came in that way. Neither did Ryan. The sliding door was old. It stuck so bad even I could barely open it. So who the hell was that? I held my breath, every nerve in my body screaming. The footsteps moved into the living room. The boards creaked under the weight. Whoever it was made no attempt to be quiet. They just walked. Then silence. The house was so still I could hear the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the faint ringing in my ears from pure panic. And then the bathroom light flicked on. The glow spilled across the hall and into my room, a harsh yellow beam that cut through the darkness. I was lying on my side, facing the open doorway. My eyes were wide, locked on the thin slice of hallway I could see. A shadow moved. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, just a silhouette gliding past my door, slow and deliberate. He didn't look in, just kept moving until he vanished into the bathroom. The sink turned on for a second, then off. The light stayed on. I pressed my face into the pillow, barely breathing. My mind was screaming at me to move, to do something, but my body was locked in place. He moved again. Into Ryan's room, drawers opening, things hitting the floor. A low grunt like he was frustrated. What the hell was he looking for? I wanted to grab the phone, but it was in the kitchen, next to him. I wanted to run, but where? The front door was in the living room. The only other way out was the window, and it was painted shut. So I stayed, frozen. Minutes crawled like hours. Then footsteps again, back past my room. He started pacing. Living room, bathroom, Ryan's room, over and over. His breathing was louder now, ragged, almost angry. Why wasn't he leaving? Why didn't he check my room? And then it hit me like a punch to the gut. He knew I was here. I don't know how I knew. Maybe it was the way he paused outside my door for just a second too long. Maybe it was instinct, but I felt it in my bones. He was toying with me. 20 agonizing minutes crawled by. My muscles ached from staying so still. My throat was dry, but I didn't dare swallow. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the rasp of his breath was magnified 100 times. Then finally, shk, the sliding door again. He was leaving. I didn't move for another 10 minutes, not a sound. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. When I finally sat up, my shirt was soaked in sweat. I crept through the house on shaking legs. The back door was closed, locked. Nothing was missing. Nothing looked out of place except Ryan's room, which was a mess of drawers and clothes. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When Dad came home around 6 a.m., I practically ran to him. He laughed it off at first, said I'd been dreaming. When I pushed, his face hardened. "Ethan," he said, kneeling down to my level, his voice firm. "Nobody was here. You hear me?" Ryan stumbled in around 9, reeking of weed and cheap cologne. Swore up and down it wasn't him. Even dumped his drawers out to prove nothing was gone. But I know what I heard, and I know what I saw. The scariest part isn't that a stranger was in our house. It's that he wanted something. And for reasons I'll never understand, it wasn't me. I was 21 years old when this happened, and to this day, I still can't think about it without getting that same cold knot in my stomach. At the time, I had just moved out of my parents' house for the very first time. My new apartment wasn't fancy, just a small one-bedroom unit on the ground floor of a quiet suburban neighborhood called Brookhaven Terrace. The rent was cheap, the neighbors were polite but mostly kept to themselves, and the area felt safe enough that I didn't worry much about locking every window or checking over my shoulder. I worked the evening shift at a coffee shop, usually from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., so my routine was pretty simple. come home, shower, grab a snack, and unwind with a show or video game until I got sleepy. I was young, independent for the first time, and honestly felt like nothing bad could ever happen to me. Looking back now, that false sense of security nearly got me killed. It was late spring, one of those perfect nights where the air feels cool and crisp after a long, warm day. My little apartment didn't have air conditioning, so I had a habit of opening my bedroom window in the evenings to let some breeze in while I slept. The window was low to the ground, probably only a couple of feet up, and it faced the narrow side yard where a wooden fence separated my building from the neighbors. There was a screen on the window, but it wasn't one of those heavy-duty ones, just a thin frame that snapped into place. Still, in my head, that was secure enough. I remember thinking, who would bother breaking into this place? That night, I had stayed up a little later than usual, around 1:30 a.m., watching random videos on my laptop in bed. Eventually, my eyes grew heavy, so I plugged my phone in, set my alarm for the morning, and fell asleep with the cool night air drifting through the open window. It was so peaceful, until it wasn't. The first thing that woke me up wasn't a sound. It was a smell. Cigarette smoke. It hit me like a strange, sharp intrusion in the dark. My eyes fluttered open slowly at first, groggy and disoriented. For a second, I thought maybe it was coming from outside. My upstairs neighbor sometimes smoked on his balcony, but this was different. It wasn't faint. It was strong, heavy, close. Then I heard it. The faint scratch of something against wood and the soft exhale of breath. My stomach dropped. I reached out in the dark to turn on the lamp on my nightstand, and that's when my hand brushed against something. Someone. Warm skin. A shoulder. My entire body froze. By the time my brain caught up with what was happening, I was already wide awake. Heart slamming against my ribs, breath caught in my throat. There was a man sitting on the edge of my bed. A stranger. Shirtless. Smoking a cigarette. And staring right at me. He didn't say anything at first. Just sat there, calm, like he belonged there. His eyes were glassy, dark circles hanging underneath like he hadn't slept in days. I could see the faint glow of the cigarette tip as he took another slow drag, his face illuminated for just a split second. I remember whispering, my voice cracking, "What the hell? Who are you? Get out." He tilted his head slightly like he was amused. Then finally he spoke, his voice low and rough. "Didn't mean to wake you." Those words chilled me to my core because of how casual they were, like this was normal for him. I screamed then. Instinct took over. I bolted upright, shoving him hard and yelling, "Get out! Get the hell out!" He stumbled back, more startled than angry, and in 2 quick moves he darted toward the open window. He didn't even use the door, just yanked the screen aside and disappeared into the night like a shadow. I slammed the window shut so hard I thought the glass would break. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I shoved the lock into place, dragged my heavy bookcase in front of it, and stood there for what felt like forever, heart pounding, staring at the window like he was going to come back any second. When I finally gathered the courage to peek outside, I saw the window screen propped neatly against the side of the building. He'd removed it without bending the frame or making a sound. That terrified me even more because it meant he'd done this before, maybe not here, but somewhere. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I didn't even sit down. I kept every light on, phone clutched in my hand, waiting for dawn. The next morning in the daylight, everything looked so normal that it made me question my own sanity. But the screen was there, just like I remembered. That wasn't a dream. That happened. I reported it to my landlord, who basically shrugged and told me to keep your windows locked from now on. The police took a report, but nothing ever came of it. 2 weeks later, it happened again, only this time, it was worse. It was a Saturday, and my parents were out of town for a family event I couldn't attend because of work. My siblings were at school during the day, so for most of the weekend, I was completely alone. Around 10 a.m., I was sitting in the living room on the main PC, gaming like I always did when I had a day off. My parents had this old-school rule when I lived at home about not having electronics in my bedroom, and even after moving out, the habit stuck. I always gamed in the living room. I was so focused on the screen that I didn't notice the faint click of the front door unlocking. At first, I thought maybe I imagined it, until I heard the door creak open slowly. I spun around, heart skipping. The front door was wide open. For a second, I thought maybe my mom or dad had come back early and forgotten to tell me. I yelled, "Mom? Dad?" No answer. I texted both of them, still out of town. Every hair on my body stood on end. I walked slowly toward the door, half expecting someone to jump out, but there was no one there. The driveway was empty. The street was empty. I closed the door, locked it, and told myself maybe I'd forgotten to lock it after taking the trash out. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. Then I heard it, a faint zipper sound coming from down the hall. From my bedroom. I should have left the house right then and there, but stupid curiosity, or maybe shock, made me walk toward the sound. My bedroom door was cracked open. I pushed it slowly, and everything looked normal at first glance. Then I noticed my temporary garment rack, the one I'd been using because my old closet had mold issues, was slightly shifted. The zipper sound came again, louder this time. I walked closer, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then, with trembling hands, I unzipped the fabric covering just an inch and froze. There was a man inside, the same man, holding a knife. His face lit up when he saw me, and he whispered, "Hey." That was all I needed to hear. I ran. I didn't think. I just bolted down the hall, slammed my bedroom door shut, grabbed the house phone from the living room and sprinted outside. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the keys twice before finally locking the door from the outside. I called 911 from the driveway, my voice breaking as I told them someone was inside my house. The cops got there in minutes, but it felt like hours. They went in with guns drawn while I stood in the street, crying and clutching the phone. When they brought him out in handcuffs, my knees nearly gave out. It was him, the same man who had been in my bedroom 2 weeks earlier. He didn't look scared. He didn't look angry. He looked empty. Like getting caught didn't matter to him. One of the officers later told me he'd been looking for me all over the house when they found him. That night still haunts me because I can't stop thinking, what if I hadn't heard the zipper? What if I had gone to bed? Would I even be here right now? I don't live on the ground floor anymore. I don't sleep with windows open. Hell, sometimes I even check my closets twice before bed. Because once something like that happens to you, you never truly feel safe again.